When last we met, we talked about when the diagnosis is racism and why the title, When the Diagnosis is Racism. We talked about the lyrics to You've Got to Be Taught to Hate. I also offered you an example of how a child learns how to hate. And recall the example that I provided you last time about the little girl in the park before she was 6 or 7 or 8, when her mom was attempting to pull her away simply because she thought she was bothering me. Well, that too had signs and symptoms. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about today are the signs and symptoms of racism, how you see it, how it plays out in our day-to-day lives. Now, one of the things, and I don't know whether or not many or most of you are familiar with the iceberg, okay? Remember the Titanic, and this Titanic decided it was going to sink because it hit this giant iceberg. Now, they didn't see it because that iceberg was below water. Now, when I think about racism, why is it we judge people based on a few characteristics, such as my gender, such as my skin color, such as my age, okay? So we judge people based on that. But how many of you know about, let's say, my talents just based on looking at my skin color? How many of you know what my value system is just based on my skin color and or based on my gender? How many of you know what my beliefs are just based on, once again, my skin color, my gender, okay, my age? So we make decisions then about people based on just a few characteristics: age, gender, okay? We don't know about my class, socioeconomic class. You don't know about my physical ability. You know none of that. But you've made decisions about others just based on skin color, age, gender, race, that kind of a thing. So you have handouts now that will deal with racism in terms of looking at it from an iceberg perspective. Take some time during your discussions to look at those kinds of things so we make judgments about others based on, once again, skin color, race, age, okay, gender. So the iceberg then will help guide you towards looking at some of the signs and symptoms. But now let's talk a little bit about the signs and symptoms. Last time, as I said, we would talk about it. Well, today we are. So one of the big signs and symptoms of racism could be fear of others. Recall the little girl in the park. It was fear. It was fear on the mother's part that said to the child, come on, she's bothering you. Why was there a fear of others, a fear of me, once again, based on my skin color, my race, said to this mother, you shouldn't go up and talk to her, okay? What was it about me, okay? What is it about when we harass someone, okay, about skin color? I had no choice in being born black. You had no choice in being born white. But why am I penalized for having been born black? Why am I penalized for my skin color? Why am I being penalized for my hair texture? These are the kinds of things that we know people are judged on, okay? So begin to think about the fears that we have. I want you to think about some of the double standards. Why is it I will have to do this in order to get to point B, whereas you don't, okay? So double standards play a role too in how racism presents itself and how racism perpetuates itself. How do we think about the signs and symptoms when we avoid? I've gone to grocery stores, I've gone to automobile dealerships, different places, and people, I have money, but I go in and I am avoided as if I have bubonic plague. So once again, avoidance. I have friends, I thought were friends, and if they see me in a place where we don't work collegially together, no one says anything to me. And so I have to sometimes call them out. Hi, I'm still here. And then they, oh, I didn't see you. Well, why? Is it because you don't want others to know that you know me as this black person? So begin to think about that. I want you to think too about how jokes and slurs occur. And what does that say about the person that you're judging in terms of race, in terms of skin color, in terms of gender, in terms of age? These are the things that you have to think about when you think about others who are completely different from you. Look at role models. Why is it you think about a child in a school setting and all of a sudden, well, I shouldn't say all of a sudden, every child in that class has someone who's teaching who looks like him or her, but for that African American child, throughout his or her K through 12 years, has no one who looks like them. Who is their role model? Okay. What can you do if you are not a role model for that child, absent of racist thoughts, absent of fear, absent of avoidance that can help that child to begin to look at his life as being meaningful? I want you to think too about the inequities in pay. Why is it African Americans are at the bottom end of the totem pole when you look at pay? Why are we, once again, subjecting people to these kinds of things when they had no choice in being born this way? You had no choice, but why are they penalized, okay? The put downs, the avoidance, the coercion, okay? So signs and symptoms of racism follows along with the diagnosis of racism. It's there, it has signs, it has symptoms. You will have exercises to work through at each of your tables to begin to look at the signs and symptoms of racism as they present in different ways. I want you to think about some of the things that perhaps you have done in order to perpetuate this as well. This is one of the things that we're going to have to do, as I said, to continue to dig deep so that we can peel the layers away about racism and how it affects others. Racism, too, has consequences. The consequences with respect to what does it do to the person. Begin to look at racism, the signs and symptoms, and what it does in terms of a person's overall health. The blood pressure goes up. There's the stress, okay? There is the anger. Why? Once again, this is the body's way of trying to cope. There are strategies that we try and put in place to cope with these mechanisms, these things that are being thrown at us on a day-to-day basis. So signs and symptoms are important because it's these signs and symptoms that give rise to the disease itself, the disease of racism, and what it does to the body. We must begin to look at what we as a party of one, we as a group can begin to do to address racism as it currently exists, especially if there is to be a cure, and I know there is a cure. So continue to think about it, reflect on it, and look at opportunities that you have in order to begin to correct the situations that we currently find ourselves in. So in talking about the signs and symptoms of racism, what I want to do, I'm going to give you an example of something that happened to me. This was several years ago while I was still at the University School of Pharmacy. And this was before students would arrive on campus. The School of Pharmacy it's a pre-pharmacy. You're not directly admitted into the School of Pharmacy. The assumption is you're going to take courses that will prepare you to proceed with the coursework and the curriculum in the School of Pharmacy. So I had been working with this one young woman who was from, and I'll just say southwestern, south central Wisconsin. She was interested in getting into the School of Pharmacy. So years ago I had put together a handbook for prospective students who were interested in getting into the School of Pharmacy. I had spoken to this student on the phone on several occasions. We had emailed back and forth on several occasions, but we had never met. So she emails me to let me know that she would be coming to Madison, and she wanted to know if I could meet with her. So I said, sure. So the date and time was arranged, and so she comes to the School of Pharmacy, which was located at that time in Chamberlain Hall. And so I was standing at my file cabinet, going through some files, cleaning out and doing this and doing that. So she knocks on the door, and so she says, I have an appointment to see Dr. Joann Pritchett. Do you know when she'll be back? And I said, hang on a second. I'll go see if I can find her. So I leave my office, I go around the hallway, I come back, and I said, here she is. So this particular student turns about 15 different shades of red. And so she started to apologize, and so I said to her, I said, sometimes it would have been nice on your part, I suppose, if you had said, my name is such and such, and I'm here to see Dr. Joann Pritchett, instead of you saying, do you know when she'll be back? So this student was finally admitted, to make a long story short, she was admitted into the School of Pharmacy. So she's now about ready to graduate. And she knew that I did introductions or orientations for new incoming students to the School of Pharmacy. So she came up to me, and so she says, Dr. Pritchett, do you think I could have maybe 3 or 4 minutes to talk to the incoming class? And I said, sure. I didn't let on that I knew what she was going to talk about, because I knew what she was going to talk about. But the point is this. When we go back and we look at the signs and symptoms, remember we talked about avoidance. Remember I talked about fear as a sign and symptom, etc. I couldn't be the person that she wanted to see. So I want you to diagnose the signs and symptoms of that particular incident. But more importantly, when we fast forward to the next session and we start talking about the cure, this student proposed talking to the incoming class about her experiences as a School of Pharmacy student. And what she did, I will talk to you about the next time. But it was very educational in terms of what she did in order to make sure that the next group of students did not fall into the same trap that she did, okay, in terms of how we go about judging people. So the signs and the symptoms and the cure the next time for the next discussion would be very, very important in terms of us moving the needle towards a just cure for racism. But once again, I want you to go back. I want you to think about the initial how were you taught. I want you to think about the signs and symptoms. I want you to think about the example that I just provided to you. But more importantly, I want you to think about, what do you think you can do? How will you be best prepared to make suggestions, offer cures, offer suggestions about curing racism as we currently know it? So dig deep, think about it, reflect, and let's move the needle forward.